Joi, welcome to Skydive Summit. Hey. What are we doing today? Skydiving! Is this your first time?
Yes, it is.
You're excited?
Hampton Police Division detectives are investigating a domestic shooting that left one woman dead and a man badly injured. Police identify the victim as 45-year-old Joi Brown.
CJ wants to put me in a casket. 5 words sent in a text message by a woman who knew exactly what was coming. Have you ever felt trapped in a relationship where leaving felt more dangerous than staying? Where the thought of walking out the door terrified you more than staying put? Joi Brown didn't send that message to be dramatic. She wasn't exaggerating. She was documenting her own murder before it happened. This isn't a story about a stranger breaking into someone's home. This is about the person sleeping next to you for 19 years, the father of your child, the man who watched you brush your teeth every morning, who sat across from you at dinner, who knew every password, every routine, every weak moment. What happens when the person who promised to protect you becomes the one you need protection from? To the world, Joi Brown had it figured out. At 45, she was living proof that you could have it all. Every morning, she walked into Casket High School in Hampton, Virginia, as the health and physical education teacher students actually wanted to talk to. The kind of teacher who didn't just teach, she connected. Dr. Violet Whiteman, the school's executive principal, would later say Joi touched countless lives. But teaching was only half of her story. After the final bell rang, Joi switched gears. Real estate agent, 5 years deep in the Hampton Roads market, building dreams for families who wanted what she called a sanctuary, a place where memories are made, where you feel safe. Safe. That word meant everything to Joi. She spent her days helping other people find it. And at night she went home to a place where safety had become a fantasy. Joi wasn't just ambitious, she was relentless. Ask anyone who knew her, and they'd tell you. Smart, loving, adventurous. She set goals and crushed them. She traveled, she laughed, she lived loud, and she was a mother. Her daughter, preteen, full of life, was the center of her world. Everything Joi did, every goal she chased, every risk she took, was for that little girl. But here's the thing about Joi that most people didn't see. She was exhausted, not from the work, from the weight of pretending everything at home was fine. Because for 19 years, Joi had been in a relationship with Calvin Jackson. 19 years, nearly 2 decades of history, of memories, of a life built together. And now she wanted out. Ending a relationship is hard. Ending a 19-year relationship when you share a child and a home, that's complicated. But ending a relationship with someone who's already told you, directly or indirectly, that leaving means dying, that's survival mode. Joi made her decision. She was done. Done with whatever was happening behind closed doors. Done with the version of Calvin Jackson that no one else saw. Done sacrificing her peace for a relationship that had stopped feeling like love and started feeling like a cage. But Calvin wasn't done with her. Prosecutors would later argue that his entire focus was control, possession. If he couldn't have Joi, no one else could. That's not love. That's ownership. And Joi knew it. That's why she sent the text. CJ wants to put me in a casket. She wasn't being paranoid. She was being accurate. Joi spent her career helping people find their sanctuary, the place where you're supposed to feel safest, where the outside world can't touch you. But sanctuary only works if the danger's outside. What do you do when the danger is already inside? When it eats breakfast with you, sleeps in your bed, shares your daughter's last name? Joi lived in a home on Wendell Drive in Hampton, a quiet street, normal neighbors, the kind of place where nothing ever happens. Until Sunday, June 25th, 2023. If this story already has you on edge, you're going to want to see how this unravels. Hit that like button and subscribe, because what happens next will make you question everything you think you know about domestic relationships. And stay with me until the end. After you hear what happened to Joi, I'm going to share 2 critical strategies that could save your life or someone you love if they're trapped in an abusive relationship. You won't want to miss this. June 25th, 2023, Sunday evening. Around 7:45 p.m., Jermer James, a neighbor who'd known Joi and Calvin for 3 years, walked up to their house on Wendell Drive. Family and friends hadn't heard from either of them all day. No calls, no texts, nothing. So Germer decided to check. He reached the front door. It was unlocked. He pushed it open and stepped inside. And what he found in that house would split a jury, destroy a family, and leave one question hanging in the air. Was Joi's death a crime of passion in the heat of the moment, or a calculated execution by a man who couldn't let her go? Let's find out. Welcome to True Crime Footprint, where we unveil the darkest mysteries and the most terrifying true crime tales. Kindly hit that like button, subscribe to this channel, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss any of our new stories. Your support keeps these stories alive. Home was supposed to be her sanctuary. Her sanctuary became her graveyard. Jermar James stood in the doorway of the house on Wendell Drive, staring at the unlocked door. He'd known Joi and Calvin for 3 years, watched them come and go, normal neighbors, normal lives, or so he thought. But today something felt off. Family and friends had been calling, texting, trying to reach them. No response. Radio silence from both of them for hours. So Jermar walked over, knocked. No answer. Then he tried the door. It opened. The house was quiet. Too quiet. Not the comfortable kind of quiet where people are resting or watching TV. This was the kind of silence that presses against your chest, the kind that makes you want to turn around and leave. But Jermar didn't leave. He stepped inside, and downstairs, sitting in the living room, was Calvin Jackson. Jermar had seen Calvin 100 times before. They'd exchanged pleasantries, talked about the weather, the usual neighbor stuff. But the man sitting in front of him now, that wasn't the same person. Calvin was scratched, blood on his face, a wound on his head, not a small cut, something serious, but he wasn't moving, wasn't panicking, wasn't doing anything. He just sat there, staring at nothing. Jermar spoke to him, asked where Joi was, asked if everything was okay. Calvin answered. 2 words, just 2. Vague, detached, like he was somewhere else entirely. Jermar would later describe Calvin's state as zombie-like. Not drunk, not angry, not scared. Just gone. Completely disconnected from reality. Like his body was there, but his mind had checked out hours ago. Why was Calvin injured? What happened to his head? And why wasn't he asking for help? Jermar felt the panic rising. Something was very, very wrong. He moved past Calvin and headed for the stairs. Every step felt heavier than the last. The silence pressed down harder, and when he reached the top, he turned toward the bedroom. That's where he found her. Joi Brown, 45 years old, mother, teacher, real estate agent, the woman who built sanctuaries for other people, lying on the floor, a single gunshot wound to the head, dead. Jermar pulled out his phone and called 911. His hands shook as he spoke to the dispatcher, told them what he'd found, told them Calvin was downstairs, injured, unresponsive. Public Safety Communications received the call at approximately 7:45 p.m. But here's the question that would haunt investigators, prosecutors, and eventually a jury. How long had Joi been lying there while Calvin sat downstairs in silence? They hadn't heard from either of them all day. All day. That means hours could have passed between the moment Joi died and the moment Jermar found her. Hours where Calvin sat in that house, injured, doing nothing, not calling 911, not trying to help her, not trying to help himself, just sitting there, waiting. Why didn't he call for help? Emergency responders arrived. They confirmed what Jermar already knew. Joi was gone. The medical examiner would later classify her death as a homicide. Cause of death, a single gunshot wound to the head. Clean, precise, fatal. Calvin was transported to the hospital. His head injury was serious enough that doctors initially classified it as life-threatening. But here's where things get complicated. Nobody could definitively explain how Calvin got that injury. Was it from a struggle? Did Joi fight back, and in the chaos, Calvin got hurt? Or did he do it to himself after he shot her? A botched suicide attempt? A moment of guilt-fueled self-harm? Or was it staged? A calculated move to create reasonable doubt? That injury, and the lack of clear answers about it, would become the single most important piece of evidence in the entire case. Not because it proved Calvin's innocence, but because it introduced just enough uncertainty to give his defense team something to work with. The answers get darker from here. Drop a comment below. Do you think Calvin's injury was self-inflicted, or was there a struggle? Let's discuss this while we continue, because what happened next didn't make things clearer. It made them messier. Calvin Jackson turned himself in to Hampton police. He was charged with second-degree murder, voluntary manslaughter, shooting into an occupied building, use of a firearm in the commission of a felony. But there was one more charge, one that changed everything: possession of a firearm by a convicted felon.
We also have new information on last night's shooting in Hampton. Police tell us the woman killed was 45-year-old Joi Brown. The shooting happened at a home on Wendell Drive just before 8 last night, and that's not far from North Armistead Avenue. When police got to the home, they found Brown, who'd been shot. She died before medics could get her to a hospital. Now, police say they also found a man inside the home who was seriously hurt. They didn't say what that injury was, but that he was taken to a hospital.
Calvin Jackson wasn't supposed to have a gun. He'd been convicted of a felony in the past, which legally barred him from owning or possessing a firearm. And yet, on June 25th, 2023, he had one. In his home. Loaded. Ready. This wasn't a heat-of-the-moment decision. You don't accidentally end up with a gun when you're not allowed to have one. That takes planning, intention, preparation, and that gun, that was the weapon that ended Joi Brown's life. So now the question wasn't just, what happened in that house? The question was, how long had Calvin been preparing for this moment?
To Hampton now, and a mixed verdict in a high-profile murder trial.
The victim in this case, a beloved teacher at Kecoughtan High School. A jury convicted Calvin Jackson of shooting in an occupied building, but jurors were deadlocked on the most serious charges, a murder and gun charge directly connected to the death of Joi Brown. However, this case is hardly over. 10 on your side's Chris Horn has the latest developments.
3 hours of deliberation, one photograph, and justice for Joi Brown slipped through the cracks. The jury filed back into the courtroom. Joi's family sat in the gallery, holding their breath. The prosecution team, led by Jennifer Truitt, waited. Calvin Jackson stood beside his attorney, Jefferson Spears, expressionless. The judge asked the foreman if they'd reached a verdict. They had, sort of. On the charge of shooting into an occupied building, the jury found Calvin Jackson guilty, a Class 6 felony. Maximum sentence, 5 years. 5 years. For taking a life, for ending a mother's existence, for leaving a little girl without the woman who raised her. But on the charges that actually mattered, second-degree murder, voluntary manslaughter, use of a firearm in the commission of a felony, the jury was deadlocked. They couldn't agree. The judge had no choice but to declare a mistrial on those counts. 9 jurors believed Calvin Jackson committed murder. 9 people sat in that deliberation room convinced that he acted with malice, that he killed Joi because he couldn't control her anymore, that this was premeditated violence dressed up as passion. But 3 jurors disagreed. 3 people looked at the same evidence and saw something different. They believed this was voluntary manslaughter, that Calvin killed Joi in a moment of overwhelming emotion, not calculated intent. 9-3. So close. And yet, legally, it might as well have been 0. After the verdict, reporters cornered the jury foreman. They needed to know what stopped the jury from reaching a unanimous decision. What single piece of evidence was so confusing, so contradictory, that it prevented a murder conviction? The foreman's answer was precise, clinical, and devastating. There was an inconsistency of photos regarding the gunshot wounds to the heads of both the defendant and the victim. That's it. That's what broke the case. A photograph, or more accurately, photographs, plural. Forensic images taken at the scene and during autopsies, images that were supposed to clarify what happened in that house on June 25th. Instead, they created more questions than answers. Let's break this down. Joi Brown died from a single gunshot wound to the head. Clear, undisputed. The medical examiner classified her death as a homicide. No one argued that. But Calvin Jackson also had a head wound, a serious one. Serious enough that when paramedics arrived, they classified it as life-threatening. He was transported to the hospital, treated, survived. The problem? Nobody could definitively explain how Calvin got that injury. Was it from a struggle? Did Joi fight back before she died? Did she grab for the gun? Did they wrestle? Did the weapon discharge near Calvin's head in the chaos? Or did Calvin do it to himself after he shot Joi? A moment of guilt, of panic, of realization that he'd just destroyed everything? A botched suicide attempt? A man who couldn't live with what he'd done? Or, and this is where the defense found their opening, was it staged? A calculated move to create exactly this kind of doubt? To make the jury wonder, if Calvin was injured too, maybe this wasn't as one-sided as the prosecution claims. Maybe there was a struggle. Maybe this really was passion, not premeditation. The forensic photographs should have answered these questions. They should have shown, clearly and undeniably, the nature of Calvin's wound, the trajectory, the timeline, the mechanics. But they didn't. The images were inconsistent. The angles didn't match. The documentation was incomplete. And those inconsistencies gave the defense exactly what they needed: reasonable doubt. Because in a criminal trial, the prosecution has to prove guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. Not beyond all doubt. Not with 100% certainty, but enough that a reasonable person couldn't walk away thinking, maybe it happened differently. And 3 jurors walked away thinking exactly that. The defense didn't have to prove Calvin's innocence. They just had to introduce enough uncertainty to make the jury hesitate. And those photographs, they did the job perfectly. Doubt created, malice questioned, murder charge, dead in the water. So Calvin Jackson walked out of that courtroom convicted only of shooting into an occupied building. The man who sent Joi Brown to her grave, who sat downstairs in silence while her body grew cold upstairs, who illegally possessed the firearm that ended her life, now faced a maximum of 5 years in prison. 5 years. How does a text message predicting your own murder not guarantee justice? How does a 19-year relationship ending in a fatal gunshot get reduced to intense passion? How does a mother's life, a teacher who shaped young minds, a real estate agent who built dreams, a daughter, a friend, a human being, how does all of that become worth only 5 years? The family sat in that courtroom, stunned. They'd watched the trial, heard the evidence, seen the text message, listened to the testimony about Calvin's illegal firearm, about the hours he spent sitting in that house doing nothing while Joi lay dead upstairs. And the system told them, not enough. We can't be sure. The photographs don't line up. The prosecution had one more card to play. Commonwealth's attorney Anton Bell released a statement almost immediately after the mistrial. His office would retry the case. They would go back to court, re-examine the forensic evidence, address the photographic inconsistencies, and seek a conviction on the murder charge. But retrials take time, and in the meantime, Calvin Jackson sat in custody on a single conviction, facing a sentence that didn't come close to matching the crime. If you're as frustrated as I am, make sure this story reaches people. Share this video, because Joi's story isn't over yet, and her family is still fighting. Before we get to what happens next in the courtroom, I need to talk about something crucial. Joi sent that text message, but it wasn't enough to save her. So I'm going to give you 2 strategies that might, because knowing the warning signs isn't enough. You need to know how to act. The Commonwealth of Virginia isn't done. Calvin Jackson will face trial again. But for thousands of people trapped like Joi was, the question isn't about courtrooms, it's about survival. Joi sent that text message. CJ wants to put me in a casket. She documented the threat. She told people. And it still wasn't enough to save her. So before we talk about what happens next in court, I need to give you 2 strategies that could save your life or the life of someone you love. Because recognizing the danger is only step 1. Getting out alive? That requires a plan. If you're in a relationship where leaving feels dangerous, listen carefully. Never announce you're leaving. I know that sounds counterintuitive. We're taught to communicate, to have honest conversations, to give people closure. But when your partner has already shown you, through threats, through control, through violence, that they won't let you go, announcing your exit is signing your own death warrant. Separation is the most dangerous time. Statistically, the risk of being killed by an intimate partner skyrockets the moment you try to leave. That's when they realize they're losing control. And for people like Calvin Jackson, Losing control is unacceptable. So you leave in silence, but you don't leave alone. Quietly confide in trusted friends or family, people who can check on you regularly, people who know what's happening and can act if something goes wrong. Joi's friends tried to do this. They called, they texted, they sent a neighbor to check when they couldn't reach her. But by the time Jermar James walked through that unlocked door, it was too late. Don't let that be your story. Set up coded messages or check-in systems. Tell someone, if I don't respond by this time, call the police. Use a word or phrase that signals danger without alerting your abuser. I'm fine, just tired could mean, I'm not okay, send help. Make it subtle, make it clear, and document everything, every threat, every text message, every injury. Every time they take your phone, monitor your location, isolate you from friends and family. Screenshot the messages, photograph the bruises, write down the incidents with dates and times. But here's the critical part. Store that evidence somewhere your partner can't access. Cloud storage with a password they don't know. A trusted friend's house. A work email account. Anywhere but your phone or your home, because if they find it, they'll know you're planning to leave, and that's when things escalate. Secondly, if you've decided to leave, your abuser cannot know until you're already gone. Don't confront them. Don't give them a chance to talk you out of it, to apologize, to promise they'll change. And definitely don't give them a chance to stop you by force. Start securing important documents in advance. Your ID, your child's birth certificate, social security cards, bank statements, passport, medical records. Anything you'll need to rebuild your life on the other side. Get copies, hide them. A safe deposit box they don't know about. A friend's house, a workplace locker. Have a packed bag hidden outside the home. Not in your closet where they'll find it. Somewhere external. A friend's house, a storage unit, your workplace, essentials only, clothes, toiletries, medications, cash, copies of those documents. And then, this is crucial, contact a domestic violence hotline before you leave. The National Domestic Violence Hotline is 1-800-799-7233. They're available 24/7. They can help you create a professional, step-by-step escape plan tailored to your specific situation. They can connect you with shelters, legal resources, financial assistance. You don't have to figure this out alone. When you leave, leave completely. No contact. New phone number. Block them on every platform. Alert your workplace. Alert your child's school. File for a restraining order. Change your routines. Don't go to the same grocery store, the same coffee shop, the same gym, because they will look for you. And if they find you, the danger isn't over. Joi tried to leave. She told people, but the system failed her before she could get out. Now her family is demanding something called justice for Joi. If these tips are not strong enough, kindly drop more tips on the comments below. Commonwealth's attorney Anton Bell made it clear, this case isn't over. His office will retry Calvin Jackson on the charges the jury couldn't agree on. Second-degree murder, voluntary manslaughter, use of a firearm in the commission of a felony. But the second trial comes with higher stakes. The prosecution knows exactly what broke the first jury. Those forensic photographs, the inconsistencies, the questions about Calvin's head wound, the doubt. So they'll have to address it. Bring in experts. Get clearer documentation. Explain definitively how Calvin sustained that injury and why it doesn't change the fact that he killed Joi with malice. Because the broader pattern is undeniable. Domestic homicides surge when victims attempt to leave. It's not random. It's not coincidence. It's control, possession, the belief that if I can't have you, no one will. Joi's case fits that pattern perfectly. 19 years together, a shared child, a shared home. And the moment Joi decided to reclaim her life, Calvin made a choice. He picked up an illegal firearm, a gun he wasn't supposed to have, and he ended her. The question for the second jury is the same as the first. Was this an ambush killing driven by malice and premeditation? Or was this intense passion, a tragic explosion of emotion that should be classified as voluntary manslaughter? 9 jurors believed it was murder. 3 disagreed. The retrial will decide which narrative wins. But here's what we already know. Joi Brown is dead. Her daughter is motherless. Her students lost a teacher who cared. Her clients lost an agent who believed in building safe spaces. And Calvin Jackson? He's alive, facing a retrial, yes, but alive. Joi Brown was 45 years old. She was a teacher who shaped young minds, a real estate agent who built dreams, a mother to a little girl who will never see her again. And she knew that Calvin Jackson wanted to put her in a casket. She said it out loud. She sent the text. She documented the threat, and she still couldn't escape. That's the reality of domestic violence. Knowing doesn't always mean surviving. Warning signs don't always lead to intervention. The system doesn't always protect the people who need it most. But that doesn't mean we stop trying. It means we fight harder. We share these stories. We teach people how to recognize the danger. We give them the tools to escape. And we demand justice for the ones who didn't make it out. If this story moved you, or if you know someone who needs to hear those two strategies, share this video. Subscribe so you don't miss the update when the retrial verdict comes in. And comment below, what do you think the retrial will reveal? Joi's text message was a prophecy. The retrial is the reckoning. Our hearts ache for Joi's family. Words feel inadequate, but please know you are held in deepest sympathy and prayers. May you find strength and comfort in the memories of Joi. Thank you for watching, for your attention, and for joining us on this journey of reflection. Stay informed, stay vigilant, and above all, stay safe. See you on our next video.